So I mentioned in my sub £500 build log video that if Harry puts it in can be found here, that the Asus ROG range of boards with all their bells and whistles weren't really worth it in terms of performance if you're on a budget, which I suppose can also apply even if you're not and just can't justify spending the hefty amount of cash on one of them. Well, today I'm going to test this theory, and the way I'm going to do that is by ranking the selected boards, in this case Asus's H110 and Z170 MiniITX range, on different categories and coming to a verdict at the end as to whether it's worth splashing the extra cash on them or not. The categories will be features, such as whether it comes with Wi-Fi, what type of connectors it comes with, and its ability to overclock. Speed, which we'll determine by using an i7-6700K Skylake CPU with 16 gigs of Corsair Vengeance DDR4 memory, a GTX 980 Ti to reduce the chance of any bottlenecking, and we'll be running the usual benchmarks like Cinebench as well as GPU intensive ones such as Unity and Heaven to see if it has any impact on FPS. Lastly, we'll be determining the value of the board based on its ability to do the previously mentioned categories against the overall price of the board. We'll score each category based on a 5-star rating and use them all to come to a final, all-powerful, over 9,000 conclusion. So, hopefully, by the time you finish watching this, you'll have an idea on whether or not it's worth spending those hard-earned pennies on a higher-end board with extra features, or if the lonely, lower-end board will do exactly the same thing for much, much cheaper. We'll start by going over the boards individually. The Lone Wolf, the wanderer in a sea of Z170 awesomeness and gaming features. I give you the H110i. The cheapest MiniITX board from Asus in this chipset has a lot to stack up against, but what is it featuring itself? Asus are promoting the fact it supports their 5x protection 2, which features hardware safeguards for all-round protection from overvoltage or unstable power supplies, as well as LAN guard for higher surge tolerance on the LAN port and a 7,000 plus hours validation. Not too shabby. Support for DDR3, DDR3L, which depending on your situation could be a positive or a negative. If, say for example, you just wanted to upgrade your current board and you don't not have to buy new RAM, it runs the now standard UEFI BIOS with Easy Flash that everyone loves from Asus, as well as the AI Suite 3, which admittedly has improved a little over the previous chipset, as well as the Fan Expert for dedicated CPU and case fan optimization. I/O on the board is 4 USB 2, 1 PS2 port, 1 HDMI out, 1 DVI-D, 1 VGA port, 2 USB 3 and 1 gigabit LAN and a bank of audio connectors. It has 2 DIMM slots with support for up to 32 gigs of DDR3 or DDR3L RAM. As I mentioned earlier, the L just being lower voltage, meaning less heat and hopefully longer lifespan. Support for up to 2 front USB 3 and has 4 SATA 6 ports along with 1 PCI Express 3.0 slot. So the Z170i Pro Gaming Edition motherboard is our middle of the range contender parked directly between the other two, but do the features stack up? Unlike the H110i, this board, as the name suggests, is on the better Z170 chipset, meaning more performance under the hood. The board supports the latest DDR4 RAM modules up to 4000 MHz, RAM cache for super fast primary storage, but not permanent, so don't forget about that. Supreme FX audio offering high fidelity near lossless audio, Sonic Radar 2 which displays a stealthy overlay giving you a visual representation of where sounds are coming from in a game, Intel's Gigabit LAN with the previously mentioned LAN guard, but also with Asus's Game First software designed to optimize network traffic for faster lag-free online gaming if you're into that kind of thing. A new one introduced to the Z170 is ProClock, and it's designed to be a dedicated base clock generator that can ramp up frequencies up to 400 MHz or more when overclocking. On the board we have a PS2 port, 2 USB 2s, DisplayPort HDMI, 4 USB 3, 2 USB 3.1, a gigabit Intel LAN port, 802.11ac Wi-Fi and a bank of audio connectors, as well as the usual PCIe 3 slot. All very nice for only £128. The Asus Maximus 8 ITX is our ROG board in this comparison and is also the most expensive, coming in at £200. It's not cheap. Question is the extra cash well spent? The board supports all of the same Asus features as the Pro version, with the added extra of supporting overclocked RAM up to 4133 MHz, and expands on its storage with a USB 3.1 Type-C connector and an NVMe U2 connector. Another discrete feature worth mentioning is that the motherboard audio jacks, which are coloured black on this board, have coloured LEDs in them which relate to which jack they're actually for, which I think is a nice feature and I'd like to see more of. Some of the extra budget, however, is geared more towards the actual hardware used within the board itself, such as the microfine alloy chokes on the VRM, upgraded MOSFETs and 10K black metallic capacitors, overall feeding that CPU you spent so much on, much cleaner, more stable power, capable of providing greater efficiency at higher currents, something you want to take into consideration if you're planning on doing serious overclocking. Fan Expert is nothing new for Asus, but another worth mentioning, giving you advanced control over fans within the BIOS, and this board even comes with a fan extension header for bundled fan extension card upgrades in the future. The only other feature worth mentioning would be Keybot, which has had an upgrade to, yes, you guessed it, Keybot 2. Keybot enables you to assign macros to normal keyboards and assign shortcuts to open applications or folders. On the back of the board you will find HDMI out and SP diff, start, reset, clear CMOS and USB BIOS flashback, 4 USB 3.0, 802.11ac MIMO Wi-Fi, internal LED lit audio bank, USB 3.1 Type-C, USB 3.1 Type-A and Intel Gigabit LAN. It has 2 DDR4 slots, 4 SATA 6 ports, 1 U2 NVMe port and of course a PCI Express 3.0 slot. So, we've gone through the hardware, but how do they perform? Well, let's move over to the test bench to find out.